Artists need to stop leasing beats.
Oh boy. You know this is going to be a good one, right? Why do I go so hard for beat leasing? I've said this in a couple videos before, but I used to be 110% against beat leasing. I hated beat leasing. I swore to never do it. And you can believe me or not when I say this, but if I had started leasing beats 10 years prior to when I actually did start, instead of just hating on it, I'd be $1 million richer, and I would probably have a lot more plaques on the wall. I don't want you to make that same mistake just based on information from the internet from people whose credentials you don't even know. So Aaron brings that up when we discuss this video. We discuss the limitations of beat leasing, the perception of beat leasing versus locking in with a producer, as they say, because I think there are a lot of misconceptions out there, and a lot of us have these beliefs that we hold so strongly that we never have a chance to actually consider whether or not they're objectively true. So the link to the podcast channel is below. Thank you so much for migrating to the new YouTube channel and supporting the MEC podcast. Appreciate you watching. Peace.
I said that artists need to stop leasing beats and instead find a producer that you work really well with and lock in. And the rebuttal I got was, oh, I can't afford that. You guys need to understand that this music industry is not for the broke. And I say this respectfully. Personally, I would prefer to spend a little bit more on a beat that I can do anything with and it's mine, as opposed to spending, a fraction of that on a lease beat and 10 other people have that same beat. And remember when I was telling you guys about bartering, the exchange of services? This is a perfect example of when bartering would be valuable. It takes a lot of money to put behind a music career. All I'm saying is you got to think long term.
Is her name Ghost Right Her?
Yeah, her real name is Fabiola, but yeah, her Instagram is ghost_right her, WRITE.
Okay, we could take her off the screen.
And she's a social media manager. There are some comments that I do want to talk about that are interesting, but
and she has no time for you brokies. So if you're broke, Aaron, first reaction to what she was saying.
I don't like when people make definitive statements about the way that people build their business, especially when there's so many so many things proven in opposition to what she's saying. Like if you're saying, don't just think you have to do it this way, super rock with that, because I'm big on that. I'm like, there are so many ways to win. There are so many ways to make money. There are so many ways to build a business. But it's almost like because she makes such a definitive statement at the beginning, it's hard for me to take anything that she says seriously after that, because it almost feels like she refutes herself. So she says, lock in with a producer. And then she says, I would rather have a beat that I can do anything with and spend a little bit of money. When I hear lock in with a producer versus lease beats, I hear work with a producer who's going to give you free or severely discounted beats as y'all work together. So then when she said that, I'm like, oh, she may not mean lock in with a specific producer. She means just get your music produced so that you own it. But again, like there's a million ways to slice the business. I've never gotten a sync off of leased beats, but I've still seen leased beats generate revenue, notoriety, signings, all sorts of things like that, and can be part of a actually really robust business model, especially if you know what you're doing. So I felt like that was like really interesting. I think that she does say some things towards the end that I'm like, I don't necessarily disagree with that. I also don't disagree with like locking in with a producer, but I also know several examples of people who lock in with producers and they're like, hey bro, you record on all of these beats, but I still have them up on my BeatStars. So like, I'm giving you free access to these, but if somebody wants to buy an exclusive, we got to take this down or whatever. And it's like they're locked in, but part of the reason that the producer is open, sometimes the producer is building the beat specifically for that artist, still putting it up on YouTube, BeatStars, whatever, because he's like, I'm building with you, I'm helping you develop your sound, somewhat of like an A&R situation that they have, but it's still being leased. So I don't know. I just think there's a million ways to win. she has a lot of emphasis that I'm wondering where it's coming from. Like, what's the reason of the point that she's making? And I don't laugh to dismiss her, because it's like, we just have different opinions on this. I'm not saying that she's not valid, but I think the way that she put it, and then to me, when I started going through the comments, I was a little thrown off how strong she was coming to people who had intelligible disagreements, but I also was floored by the amount of people that you could see have no motion who agreed with it. So then it made me feel even more justified in being like, what? Because you could tell that there's so many people who were like, yeah, that's what I'm on. But I don't know. And I don't understand the affordability thing. You're limited by your own beliefs or lack thereof. So like every excuse that she puts in there, I'm just like, why are you even thinking like that? Just try.
I guess I just want to know what her angle is. Like Aaron's saying, there's an angle, because she's really emphatic about this belief, and it's such a hard line belief that has been proven disproven a million times. Anytime someone makes absolutist statements, my guard automatically goes up. And in this instance, saying the music business is not for the broke, that's one absolutely absolutist statement. It's been proven time and time again that it's not for the people. It's not for the rich. I mean, it's owned by the rich, but not every artist is a Lil Mabu. You know what I mean? Like, that's really just, are we saying that every successful producer and every successful rapper came from money? That's not true. Is a willingness to invest sometimes necessary? Absolutely. Sure. But I just, that statement already kind of poisoned the well for me. And then the second thing she said that poisoned the well for me was that she doesn't want to lease beats. She wants a beat that she can do anything with. But let's be perfectly honest. You're talking about a buyout. You're talking about getting every single copyright transferred from the producer to you, which is just not typical. So you can't. I don't
think she was suggesting that.
Well, okay, but then that's the problem, because what she was saying doesn't reflect the reality of intellectual property laws. My personal feeling about this, and sorry, Dame, you can finish your thought, because I think it's an interesting thought, is that she's just doubling down on something because it already got engagement. Because she started the video off by saying, I posted this and a lot of people responded by saying this. Okay, so she already knew it was getting engagement. That's why she posted it. But sorry, what were you going to say? I wanted to flesh that out.
No, I just didn't hear that in her, that she was suggesting like a buyout where, the producer no longer has any rights to anything. What I heard was just being allowed the flexibility, to do, because leasing beats, I'm a fan of leasing beats if that's what if that's where you're at in your career, right? I'll even connect it to the Doechii conversation, right? It's like your plan, like, where are you at now? Where do you want to be? You might start out in a space where you have to lease beats because that's where you're at from a financial standpoint. But then as you go in your journey, you might meet somebody like Payne that is so impressed with what you do that he wants to lock in with you and help you really develop your sound. If I was an artist, I would prefer, or what I would suggest, if you do have somebody like Payne that is dope at what he does and loves what you do, like, to build together. Because I think one of the biggest problems in music with independent artists, and I've said this before, is the lack of consistency. And I also talked about this with Six, Logic's producer. Having somebody that you've locked in with prevents the lack of consistency in the quality of your music. Like, when you're jumping around from producer to producer, I think that, and you're not developing trust with that producer, and that producer is giving you feedback, you're not getting that because you're jumping from producer to producer. That's what I think leads to one of the reasons that leads to the lack of consistency in the quality of your music.
No, the only reason I said what I said was because she said she distinguished between beat leasing and exclusive beats, in the regard that if you have an exclusive beat, you can do anything, quote, anything, unquote, with that beat. And so I'm thinking, wait a minute, what can't you do with a lease that you can do with an exclusive? And then I'm thinking, you must think that you own it entirely, every element of that the intellectual property you own. So therefore, you can do anything. You can resell it. You can sync it without the producer signing off on it. You can transfer that ownership to a label. You can do what you can get radio play. You can perform. You don't have to take into account the producer's input or their equity in the song. And that's, to me, problematic. It just makes me think, given how vague it was, like simultaneously vague and incredibly specific and emphatic. That just makes me think, and no disrespect, that she doesn't fully understand, or she hasn't fully fleshed out that idea in her.
It sounded like she's pretty intelligent and she probably has experience in it. I wouldn't then go jump to think that she believes that she can literally do anything with the beat. I think, but you do have, once you have a producer agreement in place and you're kind of on the same page, you do have more flexibility in what you can do with the music, whether it's content ID or it's easier with sync placement. I know you can get sync placements with lease beats, but just a bunch of other people, hearing a bunch of other people on your beat, even if you don't hear it, just knowing that a bunch of other people have it. I know sometimes throws artists off, but again, that might be where you're at. You can only afford lease beats at this point, and that's what you use to get your reps in and to get your shots up, to tie it back into Aaron's topic.
Yeah, I just personally don't want people looking at lease beats as practice. It's a song. You're making a song. It's still a piece of intellectual property. And there have been viral songs, hit songs made off of leased beats. Some of those hit songs remain leased. I think the majority of them end up becoming exclusive. And Leave Me Alone, Old Town Road, Panda. If the labels see some money, they're gonna figure out a way to make it work. If the money's already there and they just want to grab at it. But the top selling the top selling rap song of this year of 2025 is Tweaker. That beat wasn't even leased. That beat was just taken off of a platform, and the producer's tag, the get your beats now, purchase your beats now tag is still on that track, and it got handled, but it blew up and was everywhere before it was even legally licensed or owned by the entity that released it, and it got handled. The producers aren't going on a complaint campaign. They're happy. Everything got handled. That's just how the music business works. So I think,
so you're
as Aaron said, there are a million counter examples to what she's saying. And so I'm wary of anyone making these absolutist statements, telling people what to do.
You're definitely right. I shouldn't have said practice, although, if all the music you make in the beginning is practice to me. And if you're using the excuse, I don't have anybody sending me beats, you got to go to the lease beats market. But yeah, I just don't want anybody making excuses or why they can't create. Hopefully that's a common theme that you hear in this episode. But does anybody else has anything else to add to this young lady's opinion before I go on a quick rant and we get up out of here?
I would say this, especially in the comment section, when you're looking at all the people who are emphatically agreeing with someone who's pushing an absolutist point, or you're looking at people who are making really strong statements that might seem a little too extreme, especially when they're telling you what to do and not being flexible, saying you need to do this, do this, do this, do that. Don't do that, do this. Please just click on their name, see what they're doing. Because a lot of the artists, as Aaron said, a lot of the artists don't even have music up on streaming platforms. And if they do, they're not doing it for a living. And I'm not saying their opinions aren't valid, but, and maybe I'm an asshole for this, if you've never had a music career where you've made a living off of music and you're telling other producers, other artists how to make a living off music in these extreme terms as though you're an authority, what you are doing is at best incredibly careless and childish, or at worst just fraud.